Infeld is in the building, and I mean quite literally. If you're watching us, this is in his magnificent art studio, man. I am this place looks absolutely incredible. Max is a Curio Cards OG. He actually created some of the most valuable Curio cards in the collection, 27, 28, 29. So I'm very excited to have Max on. We spoke at NFT Miami together, got to learn more about each other, and it turns out that Max has been in crypto almost since the very beginning. So a true OG and a true pioneer. So what's up, Max?
What is up? I'm so happy to be here. This is super exciting, and yeah, welcome to the studio.
Dude, tell us a little bit about the studio before we get into the history of Max.
Yeah, no problem. So I'm in Chico, California, and this is like the geographic center of the city. It's actually an old Masonic temple from like 1850 something. It's pretty massive. This floor, I think, is around like 3,000 square foot. I don't know how I even landed this spot, but it's freaking amazing. Been making art here for about 4 years now. Yeah, it's spooky, weird, old creepy white man energy in here. So you don't want to be in here alone at night, that's for sure.
So yeah, I could see in the background, it looks like there's some paintings that you are in progress of, and then it looks like there's drawings and stuff that's all over the place. All I need you to have is just like one of those like white coats on with just like paint all over.
Oh man, it gets so messy in here. Yeah, it's kind of a shame. It's all these wooden floors and I'm getting like super messed up, but hey man, that's the cost of making art, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. So how long have you been making art? Obviously you took your art concepts and applied it to Curio at the very beginning, but my presumption is that you've been participating in the art market for much longer.
Yeah. I have never been successful at monetizing art. I mean, I made art since I was very young. And I just couldn't stop. You know, that was the thing. It kind of, I didn't really choose to be an artist. I mean, I do other stuff besides that, but I got into art while I was studying computer science. Computer science was like super, super boring and dense. And I had to step away from studying it because I found, I needed more interaction, more engagement. So got into studying art and found out people wanted to hang out, work on projects together, collaborate. And in that process, I learned about, art philosophy and theory. And that part got like super exciting for me. And a couple of the concepts that I started focusing on were coming up with the idea first, then picking your medium, and like coming up with the idea, picking the best tools for the job. So I had this pressure in school to go towards printmaking. I love printmaking. I love the process of it. Just like truly, truly love like etching and lithography and screen printing. Like the whole thing it just really speaks to me. The process is incredible. But I found that I had trouble getting some of the ideas in there. And then I learned about this art in this is around like 2006, 2007. I learned about this art called social practice. Now they call it social engagement, but it's an interactive form of art where the viewer is kind of like the co-creator. So you're essentially like, making art in the street, like interviewing people, and you see it kind of like Jackass type style, like performances or something like that, where it's like the art isn't just, just one side. It's not the art just putting, the artist putting things on a pedestal so I really love that, like, the community builds art with the artist that takes on another dynamic, more of like a director or a, kind of like a director or like a producer. And I truly I fell in love with that. Started exclusively making art like that. Worked on tons of different community projects. In 2007, my most notable one, I made my own currency and it's called Viral Monetary Units. And it was paper money, and I tracked it in a ledger. And it actually, every single note was serialized. There's beer, coffee, and food. You could get someone to accept these. So I gave them out in stacks of 100 to all these people around the world. I think I printed around 70,000. I don't have the exact numbers with me, but around 70,000 of these. And if you get someone to accept it, then you send it to my bank and they send you 3 times the value. So I created this like hyperinflationary gift giving economy around this like performative action. So if you can like help create this performance art piece and get people to accept these notes, you're helping make this artwork thrive and live on. And I started getting these in the mail, and I started sending out more of these notes and create this hyperinflationary gift economy through these notes. That was truly game changing for me, and that turned into learning about other community currency and getting into like Bitcoin pretty significantly early.
Right. Yeah. You're a true early adopter and actually a creator of these early monetary units. How many users were on this, I guess you call it experimental monetary system created by Max?
I think, oh man, there are so few. I mean, less than 1% of those, I don't even know, 0.1% of those were actually used successfully. But the people that, I mean, they got really wide distribution. So I would get, emails and letters from artists from around the world. That's like when people still sent like stuff in the mail, like, and that was incredible to hear about people who are like minting coins in Northern Europe. They're like, hey, we should trade. And so I traded with a lot of artists, got a lot of different community currencies early on. But I mean, there's like dozens of these projects that are similar to that are based around economy, community currency, like what's, why, like basically questions like who makes art, why we should make art. And I could go into that. I could literally talk about hours and that. We don't have to get into all
Yeah, we did talk about
stuff.
this probably for like 2 hours when we were down in Miami in the speaker booth. But it's interesting how a lot of the like very early Bitcoin adopters all practice some sort of different experimentation, whether it's with various stores of value. I know Max Kaiser also, who's a Bitcoin OG, had his LA social currency exchange system of something like that. And also art's always been a different store of value, and all the cypherpunks who tried to adopt different or various forms of digital currencies like DigiCash and eGold and what's the other one, BitGold, and all the predecessors before Bitcoin. It's interesting how all of it comes together. And so then Bitcoin is created 4 or 5 years after this experimentation. How did you find yourself in the community? 'Cause from what I believe, you started from our conversation before, is around what, 2010, 11, you got into Bitcoin?
Yeah, somewhere around then. I mean, I got on some threads, basically email threads. People like, check out the white paper. A few years later, command line came out. The whole time I thought it was a joke. I literally did. I was like, this, like my project was like parodying society and kind of like making this joke. And it's like every person who had the money kind of had to be a salesman for it. So I was like, this is ridiculous. And then when an actual wallet came out, I was like, this is even more ridiculous. Seeing it on on the exchange, it was like, oh God, this is a total like, wow, someone's taking this joke so far, they're actually like buying and selling it now. So when I saw it like an actual dollar value for it, I was like, this can't be real. Like, how is this even possible? So I kind of ignored it, like on and off. I mean, I definitely sent some and played with it. We'd send it to each other as jokes, like, oh, this is for your mom for last night. And then but a lot of the times we would lose the payment. So I'm like, people talk about like the actual supply being, so large, like, no way. Like, I don't know, man. I've never seen like many Bitcoin being lost in transactions before like validation in the command line. So I'm like, who knows what's really out there? But anyway, yeah, crazy times.
Yeah, it's the early experimentation phase of crypto, and not just on Bitcoin, but some of the other altcoins as well, has kind of led us to the crypto market that we have today and NFTs. So you're on Bitcoin, and we know that Curio Cards came out in 2017. Did you happen to dabble within early primitive tokens like on Namecoin or Counterparty or Doge Party that kind of helped you conceptualize what was happening with the Curio Card movement, which we'll go into?
Yeah, totally. When Namecoin came out, a couple of my crypto homies were so mind blown. We're like, oh man, this is the future of the internet. Like Namecoin is going to be like a standard protocol, and everyone's going to use this for domains. And like, anyway, we're totally wrong, but it like opened up our imagination so far. And then I remember, I remember Counterparty. I had a couple rare peppies back in the day. I have no idea where they're at. I wasn't very good at like keeping track of things. And also back then, I mean, like most of the people I know who are into Bitcoin, like didn't have that many wallets. Like we didn't really understand the concept of like having multiple identities with different wallets and things like that. Like it just never came up for the people I was in contact with. But you know, so Counterparty came out. I played a little bit with that. My homies got super into like the names, the domain names, or not the domain names, but the token asset names. And yeah, that was so cool to see. So yeah, when Curio came up, when the opportunity came up, I saw a path forward. It wasn't like super foreign. Like we're kind of already going down that path, and you know, I knew about those things already. So it wasn't like a big shocker. It wasn't like an incredible, like, oh man, this is like game changing, you know? And Ethereum didn't make even sense to me. That was I was like, why would you spend so much? I think it was like 10 cents or something. Like, it was like, why would you spend that much on a transaction? And then looking forward, I'm like, oh man, that was like nothing compared to, you know, what it is today.
So what was your introduction into Curio? Is there some crazy story, or is it something simple like a Craigslist post? Not essentially Craigslist, but just a post in a forum that you commented on, or was there some sort of like referral to it? Yeah.
So I've known Tom, one of the founders of Curio. I've known him for a really long time. I mean, technically over 20 years. And he calls me up and asks if I had any art. I'm like, yeah, of course I have art, you know? And it wasn't like a very straightforward reason at first, but I extracted that they were doing a project and making these assets. I'm like, okay, cool. Like, yeah, I got some art. I'll provide a bunch. And, you know, within a few days, I provided like 5 aliases and a couple friends pieces and a spreadsheet. Like I think I submitted, there's 5 artists I submitted, and one of them was like an actual friend that I could get to deliver some art. And the only one that was accepted was Marisol Vengas of all the aliases. And that was truly surprising. But so I found out from Tom and didn't hear about it too much. And yeah, that was found out they were doing these like weekly introductions to the tokens. I started following those, and there was like no traction on it. So I kind of like tuned out on it. And then fast forward, it kind of came up here and there, but I had no idea those were even considered NFTs until, you know, beginning of last year. Yeah.
Yeah. When we really saw this like Cambrian explosion of NFTs, and now all the definitions are being applied to even the early primitive versions of it. Everyone was still trying to really figure it out. So you said that Curio wasn't popular really. Was there a community around when it was founded? I think it was like May 9th, 2017. So just recently had its 5-year anniversary.
I would say the community was like negligible. Like I remember like, you know, a couple people chatting on there like when they did the live shows. And I was like, why, like, how did they even find out about this? There was like a little bit of like a Telegram. I don't think that came till a little bit after, but very little interest. And I think that's attributed because there's like a ton of scams on ETH. And so people were just super freaked out. They're like, why would we like buy this like weird raccoon NFT project?
Yeah.
it just seemed like a scam. You know, even people I sent it to that were friends are like, I'm not going to get this. Like, they're just going to take my dollar, you know, like that was kind of the thought around it. So,
yeah, it's funny hearing the story. So let's dive into each of these pieces of art that you contributed. They look very similar, has a very similar style. Are these taking from specific moments? Are these created, like, let's start with 27, for example. It's this it's like this blue accent of the side of a building. What's the history behind this one?
Well, so I got into more of like philosophy and art practice, and I was really inspired by computer science and like kind of things that are coming out of those concepts. So these are actually I don't, it's an algorithm that these are made from. And it's basically made with people with anticipating that eventually I'd make these in like a computer program where people can make them themselves. And so these are actually generative. So Marisol Vengas is an alias that is generated through this process. And I can run through the process. So anyone can make these at home if they want. But it's almost absurd what it really is when you look at it. So it's kind of like art without, a lot of art has more context from like the viewer. So I was making kind of this more like performative action, and this is the result of the performative action. So there's kind of a lot going on with these ideas, but I'll let people in the future be able to decipher what's happening there. So the way it works, I Googled a bunch of buildings, right? Like shitloads, downloaded thousands of buildings. And then I found ones that had interesting compositions. I even had a helper with that, kind of like flag out ones that weren't even that interesting. And then printed them out on very, very inexpensive paper. It's kind of like this, they're fluorescent colored paper. A lot of those papers now, they're kind of faded. So the originals, when you see these physical original pieces, are actually really faded. So I went to the coffee shop, called a bunch of friends up, and random people like in the coffee shop even colored these in a certain pattern. So the ones that kind of like made the cut, that had these interesting compositions, printed on this with this like crappy toner from like the super cheap laser printer, had them colored in. And that's just that back layer. So just the building on the paper. You might even see like streak marks from toner and all sorts of artifacts from that, which is kind of fun. Yeah. So colored these in. And I think the first set I did in 2007 or two. Yeah, I think the first set, series 1 was in 2007. Then, did this for kind of this, this coloring. And then, some of them people went overboard with coloring and they just looked like really bad. Like too much coloring makes them look bad. So it has to be like a balance. And there's kind of this aesthetic balance that when you show them to a lot of people, you're like, which one of these look the best? And it's kind of these more like sparse colors, kind of like laid out in this, in an even composition. So kind of pick the cream of the crop, the top like 10% of those. And then I did the same thing with the foreground image, which is these branches. So Googled tons of branches, cropped them all up real nice and neat, and then printed them out on transparencies, and then had someone go through and be like, hey, get rid of the ones that have too much branch or don't look right. So those branches are their own compositions. Next, I took them to a friend who's really good at compositions, and he picked a branch and he picked like a good background and then overlaid them, paper clipped them together. And then that's how the piece is made. There's a couple more steps, like they're glued to some very inexpensive foam core that I got from Walmart. I think when all is being said and done, these original pieces cost about 30 cents a piece to make, or maybe less than that, maybe a quarter a piece. But and then finished them up with this this air duct tape that just kind of like holds it together, because in the process of making these, I found that sometimes they kind of fall apart because they're so poorly made with the glue. So anyway, I took all these principles that I learned in school and did the complete opposite. So in art, in art school, they're teaching you to like use like acid-free materials, things that will last forever. I'm like, I'm just going to produce a ton of these things. So anyway, that's how I made these. It's not as romantic as a lot of people think it could be, but it definitely is, based on years of studying like, philosophy and art, and trying to make something that was, idea centric and really inclusive in like a community sense. Like, I'm like, how can I make these with a community? And it was basically an activity and excuse to like hang out with people.
Yeah. I'm trying to find the original piece that you brought to NFT Miami. I tweeted about it. I can't find it right now, but there's always these like lavish stories that everyone wants behind every single piece. Like when you're looking at 29, you could see some right here. I didn't even notice this until you brought it up. Some of the discoloration kind of like in the middle.
Oh, I'll tell you, you know what that is? So I could have scanned these pieces in, but I didn't want to. I took those pieces with my phone, so it would have extra artifacts. so I could always trace back to the original image that I took with my phone. I still have those images as well to prove that I was the original person that took those. So if it's ever questionable, and I thought about this. I was like, I'm gonna, I didn't want it to look too flat and too weird. If you zoom into those two in the trees, you can see pixelation on the transparency. And so where the trees are, it's all, it might even be hard to see unless you get to the original art, the original image. But there's some like I didn't even care. I was like, oh, pixely, like that's cool. Like, it adds to the process. And like, anyway, whatever.
You can see it a little bit. Yeah.
So there's some funny stuff in those for sure.
That's funny. So outside of the artwork, as you could see, some of these, like number, I believe 29, right? It's listed at 35 ETH. The most recent sale had been, I don't know, I think one of these sold for like, what was it, like 200 ETH or something like that once? 150 ETH was the last sale that it looks like because of the supply, right? It says 61 total. That's wrapped because these are originally ERC20 tokens. How did was there parameters to determine the supply of these, or was it up to the artists? And who still owns all? Do you own the majority of these still? And kind of like the release mechanism?
I have very few of those. And so the supply came from, originally I wanted to do way less because I have a printmaking background. So I think about like low supply, and I threw out some crazy low numbers. I wanted to do like standard prints, like that are like a dozen, or like, sometimes artists do like 5 special edition ones. So I think I threw out numbers like that. And then a couple people said like, don't do that. Like you can't do that. Like no one will be able to like complete the set. I can't remember the exact reason they gave. So I was like, all right, whatever, just do like 100, 200, 300. Or like, I can't ever remember why I even chose those numbers. So there's no real reason, rhyme or reason to those numbers. So yeah, and the funniest thing about these, I didn't get any from day one. Like I didn't have any of them until last year. So I didn't own a single one of these pieces.
Really? They didn't set the distribution for the creator to distribute themselves? That's how Rare Pepes did it, where the artist was given pretty much the entire supply and handed out there. So it seems like this is different.
Yeah, totally. So we didn't, I don't know about the other artists, but yeah, I didn't get any of those. I could have bought them out of the smart contract, but I literally did not, because I'm like, well, why would I spend $1 on my own artwork? Like I have the original artwork. Like it just didn't make any sense to me to spend money on these. I think I kind of assumed I was going to get some in the future, and luckily I did. I'm so glad I did. And I've even bought some of my own as well too. So I bought them back with anticipating being able to, flip them in the future as well. So, but yeah, there's no rhyme or reason to the numbers. I wanted to keep them low at first, but they wanted me to pump up the supply, and I'm totally fine about how that came out. And yeah, it's, I don't know what to say about the numbering. I mean, I was kind of shocked to see, I know Robeck got a ton of the yellow ones. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was crazy. I'm like, whoa, one person got all these. So, yeah, truly blown away. And yeah, you're looking at my Facebook page. So this page only had like 5 followers or something, which is hilarious because I've been running this art project for, 6 years or 7 years. Yeah. And I would update it a little bit. And anyway, it was just really funny to like, so that's where, Adam McBride tracked me down, hit me up, send a message. And, I'm like, he asked me like, hey, are you involved with Curio? No, he asked me, are you the founder of Curio Cards? I'm like, no, let me get you their contact info. And, yeah, it was pretty wild to find out why that these were the, some of the first NFTs.
Yeah. So tell us a little, fill in the gaps for us between, the kind of, I guess, fill in the gaps between like participating in Curio Cards, and then over the years, it kind of just like falls apart and, I guess you could say is abandoned essentially, and then revived. Was there ever any sort of traction in the intermediary during crypto winter from like 2018, 19, 20? Was there anybody who ever attempted to reach out to you like Adam did, trying to track down the Curio Card project, or was it just pretty much long and forgotten until this like great NFT explosion in 2021?
Yeah. It never came up, man. It was weird. I mean, like once in a while, like someone mentioned it as oh, like there are these tokens on ETH, but never in a context of like anything really of value or relevance. Like it just didn't come up like hardly ever. I looked back at the site, the original site that was out there, and there was like, it looked like there were some of my pieces that were still in the contract. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, oh, well, but it kind of like froze there. And I checked the actual, like the actual token contract, and I didn't see any more in there. So I was like, I guess this project is like dead in the water. And then around when Adam hit me up, there was like tons of people. I must have gotten like a dozen random messages. I even got like text messages on my phone. And I was like, this is weird as fuck. People kept saying like, are you like congratulating me about like the cards and asking me if I have any cards or NFTs. And I'm like, oh no, I got on some weird like spam list or something. But then it all made sense when, Adam, it's like, hey, this is kind of important, man. Like this, people are gonna want these because there's some of the first artwork on the blockchain. So yeah, that was pretty much it. I mean, he could have even, I would say he could have single-handedly been the person that got these, the publicity or the notoriety. But there's other people that were like finding him around the same time. I think Twitter really created kind of this like viral interest in him.
Yeah, of course, retroactively looking at things, it all makes sense. But at the time when you're minting it, did it feel like this was a historic moment? Did it feel like you were bringing new ideas to the blockchain, or did it just feel like this was just like a random project that you said, hey, I'll just take a dart and throw it at the wall and see what happens?
Yeah, I mean, back then I thought it was really innovative, but I also didn't think it was going to go anywhere. Like, no, I just didn't. I was just like, okay, whatever. Like, I'll contribute to this. And then when it was like rediscovered, I'm like, I kind of got the chills. I was like, oh man, like if this is true and this can be told in the story of like this being the first art on the blockchain, like that's a huge deal. Like that was, and then I talked to some of my friends that were involved in, I know like literally 2 other people that had gotten curios from back in the day that actually bought them. And they're like, oh man, this is going to like skyrocket. Like, this is great. Like we kind of shared the same excitement and, thoughts that it was going to take off. But nowhere near what I expected. Like I didn't think we were going to go to Christie's. I didn't think we were going to go to Sotheby's. Like that was like a lifelong dream to be at that level, as an artist. Like, and just to think that happened during my lifetime is like truly unbelievable. I still haven't fully processed the implications of that.
Right. Yeah. Having your art sell at Sotheby's as an artist is a dream of many. Has this helped, I guess this has helped accelerate your image and your brand and to reach new opportunities because you are now a Sotheby's artist, essentially? Like, has this helped accelerate everything?
Yeah, totally. I never really sold art. I mean, in 20 years of making art, like I try to make art every day, but I make a lot of art, and I've never sold art ever, because I'm focusing on like social interaction, and it's hard to sell that. Like it's, people might sponsor a project and they might give me a couple bucks for materials or whatever. I could wrangle up a couple $1,000 to do a fun community project. Like no problem. Like friends are just like, oh man, we know what you're going to do. Like here's some money for this thing or whatever. And it's always cutting corners with making art because it's so expensive for materials and kind of what I was describing about making the Marisol pieces. But if you look at like the original prices of those, I'm trying to sell those for like $10 or $20. Like that's what's crazy. So to see prices like this and then to go to Sotheby's and then all these people start hitting me up like, hey man, like I saw you have originals out there. Tell me the story about these. So they want to know context. And then a lot of people wanted them. So I gave away a ton of the originals. I tracked a bunch down from old collectors, these Marisol pieces. I paid them very well to get these back. And I had a full art show from Series 1 that was never shown. So I actually had Series 1 of these, and they were just chilling in Portland at a friend's house. I actually got all those back, and got to sell out of most of those, the physical artworks. And then I put a bunch on the Wax blockchain from other ones from Series 6. So the ones that Curio Card represents. So other ones of pink, yellow, and blue so they're almost like, if you see all those next to each other, you can see them on my picture on the top. You can see all of them. That's Series 6 with the 29 original. So anyway, there was tons of those I got back, and yeah, I sold those, and then was like, man, I should make another series, So I finally got a couple of friends together to produce Series 7, and they're much larger. These are tiny. For those that don't know it out there, they're tiny pieces. So then I made some 12 by 18s, much larger format, Series 7, and then I sold about 20% of those and traded up, and people love them. Like, yeah, it's kind of a dream come true, man. I feel like I never thought I'd ever sell art, and I kind of gave up on it. I was like, I'm just going to make it and enjoy it. And, people get to have these experiences, and you can see the foil tape. I forgot that really crappy, like, foil tape that literally costs like $1 for a whole roll of it. So absolutely hilarious.
Yeah. Have you considered selling the original 29, 28, and 27 at an auction? Have you been approached by collectors? I'm sure that it would sell for probably higher than any of the ETH individual pieces or the individual token pieces.
Yeah, I've had consistent offers for 29. I've had over a couple offers for that one for over $1 million, and I've turned that down. And then for the 27, 28, I've gotten consistent offers for about like $50,000. I'm like, no, I got to hold on to it. Like, this is so cool. There you go. Yeah.
There it is. Yeah.
There's a 29. Yep. So I can't do it. It's too special,
Yeah.
But yeah, one day we'll auction it.
Yeah.
It's funny. I actually, I tried to give away, some of these NFTs to, a museum, before they went to Christie's and Sotheby's, and they could not figure out how to accept the NFTs into the museum. It was like so funny. And like, you just know how they're feeling now. I'm sure they're just like, what did we do? Like, why didn't we figure that out? It's because I was like, hey, I need like a tax write-off for this. And I think at the time, like, they were only a few $1,000 a piece or something like that. And they said they could only deduct what I spent on the materials to make the artwork. I'm like, oh my God, you got to be kidding me. Like, that's not going to happen. So anyway, yeah, there's still a problem with like kind of doubting what these originals go for. And like, maybe they are some of the first artwork represented on the blockchain. I don't know. I guess that's for the historians to decide, but
yeah. Well, as one thing we know about history is that the longer you hold on to it, the more valuable it becomes. So there is definitely no rush, right?
Yeah, true. No rush at all. For sure.
So in that picture that I had just shown, you were wearing an Alien World shirt. I know this is something that you've been focusing on more, and you mentioned that you had put some of the other Series 6 on the Wax blockchain. Yes. Tell us about this like next venture for Max.
Yeah, so I've been working publicly and full-time in crypto for about 5 years now, and just been very public. And I mostly got into being public when architecture for EOS.io came out. And EOS.io is I would say it's like the latest generation of blockchains where at a foundational layer, they are DAOs. And DAOs allow to select the block producers, and they're running autonomously. They can, if someone gets voted out, being a block producer, then one goes in and takes over block production. And I was like, man, this is so cool. Like, I want to be part of this. I want to support block production. So I started supporting a couple of the block producers, and we got into making and supporting other DAOs as kind of really interesting aspect of this. So it's kind of like wow, DAOs are the future. Like, you can hold community stores of value. And we had a lot of like crypto friends that they started managing their funds with multi-signature accounts, right? So, if you, let's say you get hacked on your main, with your main private keys, you can lose everything. Well, okay, well, you distribute it. So you put like keys in different locations, and essentially you can't be susceptible to like the wrench attack, right? So you essentially have to sign these off, to be able to execute a transaction, send funds out. Well, then what happens when all those people that hold those keys pass away or can't access their funds? There's a problem there. And that's where governance comes in. You can start, moving these, electing these new people to hold these accounts. So anyway, there's a major use case we saw. So we started supporting it. The reason why Alien Worlds comes in, I was one of their clients. So doing project management for some of these DAOs. We're like, well, we got to find the best tooling out there on EOS.io. And it happened to be this company. It wasn't called Alien Worlds at the time. It was called EOS DAC. And so EOS DAC made this really easy to make software. Keep in mind, this is like almost 5 years ago. Easy to make software that you could launch a token, launch they called them DACs at the time, decentralized autonomous community. So this is before they even called DAOs. And it would spin up these smart contracts for you. And you could literally create a community, assign who you want to be the community members. So after a while, we traveled and got a bunch of people interested in these communities. We never did ICOs. We never did like token raising. It was more educational. So I was part of people that were like, part of these groups of people that were more like, check out this cool technology. How would you use it? So we went to different companies like Walmart and like a bunch of farms and like everything in between, explaining how this tooling can work. And Walmart was like extremely tripped out. They're like, how did you get in here? Like, this is like, and they were really not into it. A couple people whispered afterwards, like, oh man, this is cool. Like, I follow crypto and I've never heard of this and this is awesome. But I mean, we're pretty much saying like, hey, create virtual equity in your organization, like allow user engagement to give actual rewards. And they're like, absolutely not, or this is too confusing. And so a lot of our feedback about those products is that it was too early for communities to accept them. So what ended up happening, this EOS DAC ended up creating kind of like this horse to pull the cart, so to speak. Before it was the cart in front of the horse, like scenario. So they made these gaming activities to essentially get these NFTs out there, to get these tokens out there, and this vision to create planetary DAOs. So in this game, in these gaming activities, in this metaverse, there's all these ways that you can earn this native token that when you stake it, you can use it to take over these 6 in-planet DAOs. And so a lot of my communities that I was part of basically were like hyper consumed, and a lot of the people that are involved with Alien Worlds came from those previous communities. And so yeah, it's just so incredible to see this kind of being if you could like DApp Radar, you can see the stats. We're in the top like the few apps. I'd say on some days I've seen it be the #1 blockchain application, not even just like the #1 blockchain game. Absolutely wild to see where this has gone. So there's been a lot of focus on the mining component of the game, and behind the scenes, these DAOs are accumulating tokens, these 6 planetary DAOs. But then at some point, the front end interface will get turned on, and then it'll allow people to go in, stake vote on candidates, and those candidates can then control these DAOs. Yeah, so you go to rankings, you can kind of see.
Yeah, 185,000 users. That is insane. That's it's like a sleeping giant. Like there's maybe a handful of projects that have over 100,000 users in general, and a lot of even some layer ones don't even have that many. So
yeah, that's
where are all these people coming from? Is there like a specific geographic location, kind of similar to like how Axie Infinity, most of their users were in the Philippines? Is this really distributed?
We have a lot of Philippines users, India, West Africa, Russian speaking countries. Yeah, there's a lot. Check out rankings on that first tab. You can see where we're at. There's like Pancake Swap, and like, there's only a couple other. Oh, on the real top, on the top left up there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So there it is.
Oh, yeah.
Spooner Lens is number one. Pancake Swap, Alien Worlds. So it's really crazy. And keep in mind, all these actions are on chain. So it's not like a private blockchain. It's a public blockchain. It's Wax. It's it's one of those EOS.io chains as well. So it's it's a DAO at the chain layer.
Right. And so
interesting.
And so every individual world in this game is essentially its own DAO that has its own community, which can be and each community can have any kind of specification, right? If somebody wants to contribute on, I know it's like play and earn type game, correct?
Yeah. It's play to earn. The basic mining game, you put down NFTs, and then you essentially, by laying down these NFTs, then you can mine the token. And so depending which ones you have, you can you can optimize for getting more NFTs or optimize for getting more of the token Trillium. But yeah, it's play to earn, and then over time, communities are going to try to take over these planets and extract the millions of dollars of Trillium that are inside of each of these DAOs.
Okay.
And so essentially, what you're going to see is different cultures come out of that. That's kind of my prediction. So some of them might say like, "Oh, we just want to party." Some of them might just want to, make some of them might want to do like rewards for people voting for them, right? Some of them might want to be more like tooling or provide additional value. And yeah, we're also on BSC, so that's what missions is. So the Wax is more of the mining one. Then there's kind of this these missions that you can go on Binance where you stake the Trillium, and then after your mission, you can get a share of Trillium and then also NFTs.
So those are So is the ultimate goal of this then to be just like eventually migrated onto every chain? So there's individual planet DAOs on each chain, which you can extract the Trillium token based off of the different communities that form, because we know every blockchain kind of has its own culture, which some develop like this maximalism, some are very open and inviting. So I could see that to me, as we've gone through this conversation, it makes a little bit more sense of like right here at the end, it talks about it's like an NFT social metaverse. And this kind of like goes hand in hand with the first two words in your right in your bio, which is social engagement, and using NFTs as a tool to facilitate interaction. And it's, yes, there's value to it, but it doesn't seem like that's the primary objective of this.
Yes. I think you're definitely seeing why I'm there for sure, right? I don't know if it's the goal to be on multiple chains. We are cross-chain on there, but it's really a vector, and this is more my opinion speaking about, there's a vector for getting these concepts about DAOs into these other communities. And so, if we're successful, I think we'll be on many, many chains. But I also don't think being on a, like, that is going to be a selling point in the future, because it'll be like, when you drink a glass of water, you don't know where the pipes came from. You don't know what the fittings are called and what state they're from, or like, it's a, it's one of those things it's hard to know. it's hard to know where it's going to go, but I suspect it's going to,
You never know how social consensus is going to form, especially being through pretty much the entire that you've participated in pretty much the entire history of the crypto industry. You've seen the development across chain, and sometimes it's spontaneous and sometimes it becomes toxic. Sure. Going back into like the early days, did you have a hard time, migrating over and experimenting on other chains, like going from Bitcoin to Namecoin and then Namecoin to some of the other altcoins? Because we know there was a lot of tribalism and a lot of these like social boundaries that were set up in the early days and kind of still exist today.
Yeah, the maximalism has always been a problem for me. I've tried to always stay away from anything that has like too much maximalism. I still have a problem with that too. I want to build with like tools that are the most welcoming and the most agnostic, of course. But oh man, yeah, anything that has like user friction, I try to stay away from as well. That's why I love Wax, because it's like the easiest way to onboard users. At one point I was giving away NFTs through like this like scratcher ticket. I just give them out to people. I got them in the hands of some kind of more famous rappers. And that was their first NFT. They're like, everyone talks about this, but you're literally the first person that just gave me one for free. And so it was kind of fun to see how you could use these newer generation blockchains for more community engagement, where the user doesn't have to pay. I was just like, whoa, this is where it's at for sure. But yeah, there's this like these false narratives I've seen with crypto. I remember when Ethereum came out, seeing all these pitch decks about this is going to solve the problems for the unbanked, and it's like where do all those people go? They like cash out and live on some island now? Like what happened? But yeah, I mean, even with Bitcoin too, in the first couple of years, we thought it was going to be accepted as payments everywhere, and then that was a false kind of like narrative that people kept perpetuating, and that was frustrating. And then we finally see NFTs, and then I see those as like awesome tools for communities and community interaction. It's almost like the perfect tooling, and you see like awesome events use those as passes. You see them use as membership. You see them use as like punch cards, and it goes on and on. So seeing the utility there, plus the collectability, and just seeing artists' lives change from that, like all those things together was like so overwhelming and so unbelievable. Like it's almost like I literally can't believe I get to come at it from like all the different angles, like it's truly rewarding. But yeah, man, I've seen a lot of total nonsense and total garbage. I'm super skeptical about new projects that don't add value. And there's such a huge like imbalance and continuity problem between like real value from utility versus this value that like news talks about things, and like, the high dollar value and whatever. So I'm looking forward to, the future where like the utility and actual value that it provides for people like in communities kind of being more pressing and more publicly relevant, so to speak.
And now we're moving into this. To me, it feels like we're moving into the next era or the next stage of not only cryptocurrency but art. Right, art has been very 2D, kind of moved into this 3D subtly, but now we're adding a new layer on top of art, which is community formation. That's not just typically art's always had communities around the artist, but now we get to have communities form around the projects, and then the communities can then adapt to the project, but then they can also build on top of it, which has kind of never existed. So do you think this is going to be a new era of art that's going to live on the blockchain, that's going to unlock not only just financial capital, but social capital as well?
Yeah, that's such an awesome question. Yeah, I think you're totally spot on. Like the artist will, makes these assets. They may not be used at a hall. They might like have a sale and sell a couple of these things, but someone will like rediscover them. I mean, like what very well the historical community does with these artifacts, and then builds a community around those. And I think that's going to be life-changing for artists and their families too, like in the future. And that's been a huge problem with traditional art, is that when when these families lose the rights to the art, or these artworks are resold, they never get a cut out of that. And I think, just going beyond just the artist getting the cut, a lot of these things can perpetually add value to the, generations of the artists in the future. So yeah, I think we're going to see that over and over and over. People extending and remixing this art, but then the art that it references will get, additional value. But yeah, I mean, that's so crazy to see all that, like artists actually being able to get like perpetual dividends for their work.
Yeah. I was never a big fan of art. Yes, it existed, but I never really paid attention to just the in-depth applications to it and some of the like philosophical approaches, which the conversation I had with you at NFT Miami was kind of like, opened my eyes to these using art as social engagement, which the only real social engagement prior to crypto, I guess, is like museums, right? And galleries where everyone kind of stares at the picture and says, tell me how this makes you feel. But now the art can be turned into a game, and adds this like game theory and gamification, which is kind of what the internet, I guess, the internet is like one giant theoretical game that's just between like social engagement of like and comments, but then there's the financial applications of trading and investing, and now I guess the end goal, or kind of what I've been seeing with a lot of crypto OGs, are kind of now forming around this like DAO consensus that seems to be like one of the final bosses, or one of the final big unlocks of crypto, because now everyone gets to share not only a balance sheet, but you can share an art project, and all of these communities then kind of fill their own roles out fast. I've never seen that happen before outside of DAOs and NFT communities.
Oh man, yeah, the whole thing with all the social practice, social engagement type artworks that I've seen are so inspiring, because it kind of like fundamentally creates a level playing field, and you're like, well, how do you apply this to crypto is like my biggest question. Like, how do you use the tools from crypto and like overlay those so that people can keep these things in a community and benefit from them directly? Because I always love that concept in these social engagement pieces, is that it's like an equitable experience for everyone, and you're creating this like once in a lifetime experience that we get to share together. And so everyone goes away from it and they can always reference that, and like always like think like, oh man, that was really fun. So a lot of the projects I did over the years produce this value that kind of transcends the initial idea. And it's like, they all are, you go away from it feeling good. And I think with NFTs communities, like a lot of those like social practice techniques can be applied too. Simple stuff. I mean, literally just going in a coffee shop with a bunch of pens and pencils and just getting people to like draw together is like the simplest and easiest one. But those people will like go away from that, like loving it, and it's an uncommon thing to do. Everyone's on their laptops and just kind of like in their own bubble. And I think what these, just to make a parallel with the drawing thing in the NFT community is like, just seeing what's going on in Discord and like the other games that people are playing, and they're like, earning just by chatting and things like that, like tipping. There's just so much potential to kind of like create more cool stuff to do based on these communities. So I'm so excited the direction that's going.
When you're creating art, what are you hoping that somebody who is looking at your art or engaging with it takes away from it? Is it just like a feeling of happiness? Is it inspiration, motivation? What are you trying to apply into your art that others are you hoping take away from it?
I mean, I hope people get so like exponential value out of it. It has meaningful change in their life. I want to see people thrive and grow and realize like our world doesn't have to be flat. It can be dynamic. And there's different types of value, and I love how value can be created out of thin air. So if people can start applying that to their own life and getting, I want to see I want to see a world that isn't as flat as it is. I want to see more stuff going on. And, I mean, how, like, there's like, for example, I saw this NFT project. It's like, oh, if you hold these NFTs, you can go into a club in Vegas and like you get to hang out and do something. Like, okay, that's cool, but like, what else? And it's like, I guess if you hold those tokens, you can offer to that community too, because of the network effect. So just being a token holder, you can even change the vision and change like the direction. You can submit proposals, and I just love that. Like, we're starting to see more community engagement and these tools. And I'm like, man, this has so much potential. Like, this is changing society for sure, but it's not as accessible as I hoped. It's like, we have all this massive value locked up on Ethereum, but how do you get that to go into these systems that can actually be utilized, and you can easily get these NFTs to people where they don't have to pay a ton of resources to distribute them. So we've got a ways to go, but I'm super bullish on these technologies.
Yeah, it's definitely going to keep evolving over time. I think it's interesting how crypto to me has kind of like, it's evil. It's even the playing field from a social standpoint, where the artist and the creators of projects are almost on a similar playing field, right? They put the project out, but now they have to engage with their fans, right? With the voting mechanisms, or the community offers different proposals or ideas. And then if the artist or the creator does something wrong, then it's definitely shown within the like community consensus within Discord. And you can see lots of discontent, where traditionally before that, we'll just say in like the traditional art world, the artist just put something out, and if they're already famous or they've already made success, then they don't care. They don't care what their community says, right? Because they've kind of already made it. Where with the ever-growing technology that's always evolving, combined with a evolving social consensus within the community, it evens the playing field from a fan artist, I guess, relationship, or community artist relationship.
That's such a good point, man. That's such a good point. It's the feedback loop with social engaged art goes back, like, even it's quick. It's like the artist gets to see what their audience really wants, and they have to balance it. Do they want to just always serve the audience, or do they just want to, meet their needs? I think there's, different artists communities, or different communities are going to create different cultures around the DAOs. Some of them might treat the artist in a way that the artist may not want to participate with. If they're always telling the artist what to do, then it turns into like a product scenario. And artists always have to choose. Do they just want to make stuff to put on a shelf, or do they want to add more conceptual value, or do they there's a lot of different communities that come out of these DAO models. And what's beautiful is that you can opt into one that you want to participate in. Or if you're an artist, you can say, these are the boundaries. Some might say, hey, I'm broke, I'm going to sell out, I'm going to do whatever people want. They can make very loose consensus models, around that. But I'm truly excited to be able to get DAOs, like DAO tooling, into the hands of artists. We don't even think about it. Other communities need it so badly. Like, and just teaching, and we need better ways to teach about these things, because when people hear about governance, they instantly think about government, and they're like very different, very different systems. So we don't even have a really great language for expressing these concepts in communities, and why it's valuable to hold community stores of value. We're so used to just like the bank holding everything, and like, we all know, people who are into crypto know about that for years and years, how those are different. But community stores of value can get really interesting when communities hold like massive amounts of NFTs and mint NFTs together. Like, that's going to be incredible. That there's co-creation. Maybe there's a temporary DAO with two artists, and they're like, if you want to take a stake in that project, you got to be part of the DAO. There's some great stuff that's going to come.
And DAO tooling applied to artists and art communities is, I think, going to be a massive opportunity. One project, or a few of them, I guess, in the historical NFT community that I find interesting is uncovering these vintage products, which where the original creator can't be found, or there was no original creator. Like, for example, one of the projects called Puny Codes, which is like the Puny Code emojis and art that was put on Namecoin in 2011. They were all individually created, but then they grouped them all together and then formed a DAO around it and are now contributing new ideas. Similar with Realms of Ether, where it was like 500 castles. Couldn't find the original creator, so they basically built a wrapper, and now the community is ongoing a vote of whether they want to try to live out the original creator's plan from the like just few paragraphs that they found online, or they're just completely building off of that narrative and forking it into a new direction. To me, that's kind of interesting because it's gone from like individual creator to now completely community owned, and from there we've never really seen anything like that.
And we see that with Curio too. I mean, only one out of the 3 original founders is active, and I mean, even then, he just pops in and just advises a little bit. But the DAO is autonomous. The artist DAO. I mean, there's only 6 of us on that one. That's running on its own too. So it's incredible to see. Even when Curio popped back up, like there was like a community created Discord. There was a couple weird actors in there that made it like super uncomfortable. That's a whole nother story I don't want to get into, but there's different communities that spun off of it right when it was popping back up. You're like, holy crap, like this is bizarre. Like I never thought I would see these diverse groups of people with different interests trying to create tooling and resources and appropriate in their own way. And it's like, it kind of goes back to the concept of like the longest chain wins. It's like, well, these people are adding the most value, and the most trusted ones were connected closer with the founders. So then that's why, the community kind of went that direction. But it could have gone a number of directions. I was actually terrified for a couple of minutes, but yeah, really great stuff.
Yeah, it seems like the very large NFT projects and artists are going to have multiple DAOs within their communities, which may possess some of the same individuals or completely different ones, spurred off of it. You see this already kind of happening with Bored Apes and people building a fast food restaurant, a coffee company, and then investment DAOs, and then those people then go off and build their own project. It's like, it's crazy how one NFT project, and CryptoPunks is probably the most popular for this, can just create so much wealth that the majority of the original community members go and build their own project, which then therefore creates more value out of thin air.
Oh man. Yeah. It's so crazy to see that. I think some of these NFT projects are going to, eventually create perpetual wealth for whoever holds these things, and the families that get to, hold a punk, let's say, they'll get to see all sorts of opportunities to be part of DAOs. Just because they hold certain asset.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's going to be fun to watch. What kind of art concept or type of art in NFTs catches your eye the most? You talk a lot about like social engagement and conceptual art. Is there anything that you are really interested in or that's caught your eye?
Oh man, I wish I had more time to explore that, man. I'm not up to date with that. I wish I had the bandwidth to focus on that. I mean, I love like the concept of like NFT museums and galleries. So I haven't seen too many that I'm really inspired by yet. There's a couple that are worth following. But yeah, there's none that I can really say that are super awesome. I'm definitely leaning more towards like historical ones for obvious reasons, but I love Rare Peppies. Like that's kind of like
that like trash art movement. That's an interesting thing.
Oh, man, yeah, it's just the whole I've had a fonder appreciation for those, but yeah, I can't think of too much. I love in Curio, there's a bunch of remixes. Robex facilitates some great ones. I've done some with some other people in my terrestrial community, people that I know and trust. I'm like, hey, like do a spin-off. I'll acquire some of those and I'll flip some of those. And so so basically you're kind of circling the idea of like the derivatives market, NFT derivatives, although some of them get caught up in like complete speculation and rugs, but you see this with like Rare Pepes and then the fake rares and like you said with the remixes.
derivatives in the financial market has always existed as a financial tool. And now that derivatives in the NFT markets are a financial tool, but it's also an appreciation tool, right? If you're creating if you're one of the 4 million punks derivatives, it kind of just amplifies the value of punks because it's all basically an ode to them. And then of course it turns into speculation, but that's the original idea behind it.
Yeah, and I definitely love the concept of derivatives. Like, Andy Warhol and Duchamp, they did all this, like, these, they use these concepts of the ready-made or, like, the culturally appropriated item, and it's like, oh, like, we have access to those tools as well. So I'm totally all right with that. So yeah, I brought in a few different artists do remixes of all the curios and just do one of ones. I'm like, hey, you're not doing a ton of these things. Like, you just remix one of these things, and yeah, they've had great success. I mean, that's been life-changing for a few of those guys, which is so cool to see. So I'll be doing more of those with Curio. And I want to do drops, but I just can't justify spending thousands of dollars of gas yet. When there's more cross-chain solutions that are appropriate, then I'll definitely use those to do some drops, but it just doesn't make sense right now. I try, but it's like, anyway, yeah, we'll see where that goes.
You heard it first here, ladies and gentlemen. The remixes are coming once ETH and the crypto markets can figure the shit out, essentially. But Max, I don't want to take up any more of your time. Thank you for sharing over an hour with us and showing us your beautiful studio. If you're ever down in Vegas, hit me up, and I hope to find a lot of success with that and check out Alien Worlds and whatnot. And I know you've been on like quite a speaking tour over the last few months. Every time I talk with you, you're like, yeah, I'm going to another city, speaking on some sort of DAO concept. So congratulations on all your success. I'm glad that Curio has revived and has spurred some new energy and life into the world of Max.
Awesome. Thank you so much, man. It's been a blast for sure.
I appreciate it. Thank you guys for listening and watching. We'll catch you next time.